We're not just telling stories tonight. We're opening a door to a past that, well, it refuses to stay buried. We're taking a descent into the haunted Old West.
Hopeless. Think about that word. It's a feeling that just seeps into your bones, you know? A cold dread that you can't quite name. And that's exactly where our journey begins.
So before we even set foot in the haunted landscapes of the American West, we're going to start with the author himself. See, he had an experience that pretty much laid the foundation for this entire chilling collection.
Mayo talks about this haunting that wasn't your typical rattling chains or ghostly apparitions. No, this was purely psychological. It was this oppressive, crushing weight of despair that convinced both him and his wife that their situation was utterly hopeless. It wasn't until they literally fled the hotel the next morning that the feeling finally lifted. And that experience, it completely opened his mind to the idea that some places are just wrong.
That personal haunting really becomes the gateway for us, leading from this one single haunted room in Ireland to the vast, blood-soaked plains and canyons of the American frontier.
All right, so the book we're diving into is Matthew P. Mayo's 2023 release, Haunted Old West. And you got to understand, this is more than just ghost stories. It's paranormal history. The whole idea is that the ghost stories of the West aren't just spooky campfire tales. No, they're the echoes of real violence, real tragedy, etched right into the land itself.
And now, we're crossing over. The book is packed with dozens of these tales, but we're going to focus in on 3 that really capture the different kinds of horror that stalked the Old West.
Our first stop is a place called Dead Man's Canyon, Colorado. Here, we meet Henry Harkins, a guy who really just wanted to be left alone. He ran a small sawmill, kept to himself, but his quiet life was just shattered when 2 men, the infamous Espinoza brothers, showed up on his property looking for food and carrying a whole lot of rage. Now this is where things get truly horrifying. It's the sheer glee in the violence. After Harkins insulted them, the brothers attacked him with his own axe, actually leaving it stuck in his skull. As he stumbled around, dying, they shot him, over and over. Then, one brother just casually turns to the other and says this, comparing the dying man to a piñata. It's a peek into a really profound and disturbing kind of evil. And they say Harkin's ghost still walks that canyon to this day.
So let's zoom out now from a single brutal act to an entire town that was practically defined by it. Bodie, California. This was a boomtown known for just how depraved it was. They called it a sink pit of sin and damnation. But here's the twist. Its most famous ghost isn't some tough gunslinger. It's a sweet little girl killed in a tragic accident whose gentle spirit is now known as the Angel of Bodie.
I mean, this quote just says it all, doesn't it? This line was supposedly written in the diary of a little girl whose family was moving to Bodie. It tells you everything you need to know about the town's reputation. It was a place where people felt like they were leaving civilization and maybe even God behind.
All right, our final tale from the dust isn't about a human ghost. It's about a superstition that got terrifyingly real. Cornish whiners were the experts, and they brought their folklore with them to the West. That included the Tommyknockers, these little goblin-like creatures said to live deep underground, who would either warn you of a cave-in or cause one.
And here's the chilling part. This was often the attitude, right before disaster. In the Mamie Arm Mine in Colorado, the Cornish miners started quitting totally spooked by the Tommyknockers. But the other miners just scoffed, calling it Cornish hokum. Well, shortly after that, a cave-in on Christmas Day killed several men. The mine was abandoned for good, left to the creatures who, as the legend goes, are still down there.
We're going to move on now, from ghost and folklore to an event so dark its echoes aren't just spirits, they're a permanent stain on history. This is, without a doubt, the book's absolute heart of darkness. In September of 1857, a wagon train was besieged at a place called Mountain Meadows in Utah. For 5 days, they actually held out. Then their attackers, who were local Mormon militia disguised as Native Americans, offered them a truce. Exhausted, desperate, the emigrants gave up their weapons for a promise of safe passage. What happened next was a betrayal on an almost unimaginable scale. The militia systematically executed them. 120 men, women, and children murdered at point-blank range. This might be the most chilling detail in the entire book. There were 17 surviving children, all of them under 7 years old. They weren't killed. Instead, they were given to local Mormon families to be raised, which meant, in some cases, they grew up in the very homes of the men who had murdered their own families.
The site today is said to be one of the most haunted places in the West, just filled with this unbearable, heavy grief.
So, after journeying through these stories of violence, of superstition, of just unspeakable cruelty, what's the final takeaway? How do we even judge this collection of darkness?
Well, the final lesson here is a grim one. The book argues that the Wild West was never truly tamed. Its violence didn't just end, it seeped into the ground. The ghosts that are left behind, they're basically the living receipts for all that brutality, a constant, lingering reminder of the true cost of manifest destiny.
So does the book succeed in getting that across? Oh yeah, absolutely. To use the author's own words, it's designed to stiffen neck hairs and quicken pulse rates. It's a genuinely chilling read, and it works as this fantastic and deeply unsettling portal into the paranormal history of the American West. For its masterful blend of deep historical research and just pure atmospheric horror, and for its unflinching look at the darkness of the past, we give this descent a 9 out of 10. Now, if you're brave enough to keep exploring these dark territories, we've got a couple of other titles that walk along some similar haunted ground.
First, check out Ghost Stories of the Old West by Dan Asfar. It's another great, broad collection of paranormal tales from that time. And if you want a deep, historical dive into a true story of absolute horror, George R. Stewart's Ordeal by Hunger is the definitive, gut-wrenching account of the Donner Party tragedy.
We're going to leave you with a question from the author himself. You know, it's a basic human trait to flip over rocks just to see what squirms underneath. But after this journey, you really have to ask yourself, are you sure you want to see what's waiting there in the dark?
If you want more explainers that dig deep into fascinating topics like this one, make sure you follow us. And definitely subscribe so you never miss our next deep dive. Until then, be careful what rocks you turn over. Thanks for joining us.